because of it,
right?
It's just that I need this accommodation during that particular period of time, and it's been accepted, right, in the past.
So we've talked about how, like, those questions related to the experiences with colleagues and who you report to, and your peers. Any thoughts around the same thing you've been talking about with regard to the students that you've been a leader for or managed? I know you've talked about a conscious effort because Islam is a way that you live, like it's a way of life for you. So you use the example of dressing modestly, or living by example is what I'm understanding from when you're speaking about it. And I could be, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But that's what my understanding was. How do you feel you're perceived with your religious and cultural identity by the students that you are managing, supervising, leading, whatever terminology you want to use, because you've talked about your superiors as an educator role and your peers as well.
So I think it's a combination of things. I think for a lot of them, or perhaps again because I've always looked at it from a skills perspective, my ability to coach and manage, I think there's kind of this perception of, okay, well, here's somebody who went through their undergrad, did it here, maybe saw a different, went down different paths to get to where they are right now.
Right.
We've talked about influences just in general. I always find I'm trying to understand what the question is. How did they perceive me as a Muslim supervisor?
Yes.
Is that another way of saying it?
Yes.
I wonder how much being a Muslim supervisor and just being a supervisor is playing an influence on my interaction with them. Like how much of it matters to them that I'm Muslim rather than, and that has a combination of if they come from a diverse environment, are they familiar with the religion or have friends who are in similar situations that makes them feel like that's a piece of my identity that is shining through or not? I wonder, right?
Have you had any experiences where it has come to light and
where they've brought it up?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. Like I think where again, it's interesting because maybe, like, I'm not visibly Muslim or maybe even a minority to someone, that when they hear that, oh, you're Pakistani, like, oh, you're a Muslim, like, and that's through, because I regularly use words that would identify me as a Muslim woman, right?
Okay.
So when they hear inshallah, mashallah, alhamdulillah, like when they hear those words, they might kind of feel like, oh, you identify as Muslim, or you're Muslim, and so then it strikes up the conversation of and like, and then it might be, well, what have your experience has been, or whatever the case might be. But then I can see that they're that much calmer, perhaps, right? That there's a sense of, I don't know, belonging is the word, but a sense of like,
you've let them in.
That, or I let them in, or they just feel like, oh my gosh, we're the same. Right?
Oh, okay. So this is specific to students that have a similar identity as you. Well, what about those that don't? Because you've alluded to terminology, which is affiliated with Islam very closely, and so I'm feeling, and just from hearing you, there's a sense of comfort for you to use that terminology around anybody.
Yes.
And so, how do you feel that's been maybe perceived by your fellow students that you serve, or staff, I should just say, serve, work that report to you, how they've potentially perceived that?
There's never been I've never gotten like a questioned look of what that is. It always seems like people have been exposed to that terminology before.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily something I might use in every context, but if we're talking about something personal, for instance, or if it's something related to me. So it's not like, oh, I